Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel, welcome back to Battlefleet Gothic. So I did that why play the Orcs sort of video there, and I figured why not showcase why you want to sort of work your way up with each of the different types of fleets. So here we are with our Imperial fleet, and this one you'll notice is quite different in that I don't have any favors yet. I'm going to work up to getting them eventually, but we're just not really too worried about them. What we've got here is our battleship, the Retribution. It is probably the meanest, baddest battleship in the game in terms of just raw slugging it out, including it can probably beat the Orc battleship, the Death Dealer, in a straight-up slugfest. One of the nicest things about this ship, though, is that it does have, like, 12,000 range, 12,000 range, and then it's got like really, really good torpedo launchers. The other choice for battleships, since the Imperials do have the two choices, is the Imperial class battlecruiser, and that ship is a carrier. It has 4 launch bays instead of it replaces 2 of these macro batteries. Personally, don't like it a whole lot because I don't think that 4 launch bays in an entire fleet is going to do a hell of a lot, and it means that your battleship isn't going to do all that well in a straight-up fight, but it is an excellent ship in a lot of respects, and if you've got a fleet sort of centered around it, you can get a lot done with it. But this sort of thing is what you play this faction for. You get to these really big, heavy ships. Now, one of the reasons that I haven't gotten any favors yet is because it costs a lot more a lot more points to get a favor on a battleship. You'll see that it costs 16,000 here. We are going to get AdMech. I might get it later, though, because you need more renown than this, just because, like, this bonus is you get an extra upgrade and an extra skill. You have to pay for those upgrades, so, yeah, I don't have enough renown for actually upgrading this, but the Imperial Navy actually does want all their favors centered around their biggest, baddest, toughest ships, because it makes them bigger, badder, and tougher. There's no support abilities or skills, really, other than the Inquisitional one and the Imperial Navy one here. If we look at the Imperial Navy, if you wait 3 minutes, you get a Cobra. I don't really like the Cobras all that much, so they're not exactly... Getting a free Cobra is not brilliant or anything like that. If we look at the Cobra Destroyer here, you know, it's got... It's got a little bit of firepower from its light macro turret. It's got the torpedo launcher. It's not really doing anything special or fantastic. I don't have mine upgraded. I probably should, but they're just not really brilliant. So you want your favors sort of focused on these big, hulking, expensive ships, and it makes them really, really tough and really, really strong. But all the favor bonuses for the Imperial Navy are quite subtle. They lack the sort of major impact that the Orkish ones do, or even the Eldar ones do. So because of that, you know, that does mean that you can focus on getting the upgrades and so on and so forth instead, paying for those instead. If we look at our fleet composition here, our Retribution is a good choice of a ship because it is good at all ranges. It is incredibly dangerous up close with its macro batteries. It's got a lot of damage per second. It's got those lovely lances as well, making it a little bit potent at front firing. Even though the lances are not great, they're pretty good. The rate of fire is the thing that really holds them back from being amazing, but still, even then, I mean, look at how many of them there are. That's just a huge amount of firepower there. The macro batteries as well, it lets you have that flexibility to engage the enemy at long range. It's got 400 shield, 1200 hull integrity, it's got that base troop value of 60, so all around just a very, very tough, durable, powerful ship with a lot of potential and options there. I'm upgrading it with the Voss pattern Void Shield. Since it has the 400 base shield, this counts essentially as 500 shield since I'll be ignoring 25% of the hits against it. We'll be upgrading our shields even further there. I'll definitely want the auxiliary shield capacitors pretty soon there. They're very, very powerful on Imperial ships. And, you know, you want to go down that defensive line with something like a Retribution because it's already going to be okay at slugging things out side to side, but this will also make it so that it's invincible, essentially, just going alongside other ships. We've got the supercharged Void Shields to continue on with that, and Tzeentch just to give it a little bit of anti-Eldar capabilities. And of course, because it's got such powerful broadsides, you want the enemy to sort of be there, be stuck beside it. And then, of course, it's got the Void Shield transfer, and you just get lots and lots of Void Shield transfer with the Imperial Navy. It works so, so well for them to focus on shields. So going down, we've got an Overlord. This is similar in a lot of ways. It's basically a smaller version of the Retribution there. If we look, it's got the same lances, essentially. Got these plasma macro batteries. The lance turrets here, it is pretty much, yeah, it is basically just a smaller version of the Retribution here. It's got 800 hull and 300 shield, so it's missing 400 hull, which is a pretty big jump for some reason. But again, very good at long-range engagements as well, as being tough enough to get into those close-range ones very, very effectively, especially with those plasma macro batteries getting that buff. Similar, very, very, very similar loadout, although I gave this one a stasis bomb instead of the supercharged void shields, because it's not as tough. I don't want it to be tanking hits quite like the Retribution, although of course it's also got all these shield upgrades. And these shield upgrades are just great for the Imperials. I do need to get my crew leveled up a little bit more, although I've got the ratings at full. We're getting the Master Gunner up next, and then after that we'll probably be doing Servitors. Beyond that, though, we've also got the Mars here. This is the only carrier that I've got in the Imperial fleet, and I use it to deploy fighter screens. Whenever I am up against something that I suspect is going to be launching a lot of ordnance at me, I bring this along and just have it launch fighters. It's not enough fighter bays to really have an impact otherwise, although if I find that I don't need fighters for whatever reason, I can use this to launch bombers, and they'll do okay, but it's got the macro batteries, which are excellent. I love these weapons, but they're shorter range. It's got the lance turrets, so that's also throwing that firepower out there, which is great, and it's got a Nova cannon, which is always lovely to have. The Nova cannons just really compel the enemy to come closer to you rather than staying at distance for too long. But this is a very situational ship. Its weaponry doesn't allow it to get into fights necessarily all that effectively, and it's a little bit atypical for that particular purpose. We are using it with the automated refueling systems, but after that we're slapping on more shields there. So next up we've got our list of Dominators, and I take these 3 Dominators like this instead of taking anything else because I use these as anti-Eldar, essentially. If we were to go over the roster, the Retribution up here is very much like an anti-Chaos, anti-Ork, anti-Imperial Navy sort of ship setup. It's designed for brawling, it's designed for getting in their faces and sort of getting in and getting those hits, as well as being able to pick at a Chaos fleet from very, very long range and being able to deal that damage from long range. The Overlord, exact same sort of thing. It's designed for brawling at those sort of long distances against those sort of enemies, or being really good at close range. The Hammer of Defiance here, the Mars-class cruiser. This one is designed to focus on Chaos as a faction, and Eldar to a certain extent as well. It's designed to protect me against those Chaos bombers and those constant bombing raids, as well as poking at them with the Nova cannon to stop them from staying at long distances, to force them to engage with my fleet. But if they do engage with them, it's not going to necessarily hold up, so it needs to be supported by something like the Retribution or the Overlord. The Dominators, on the other hand, are purely to deal with things like long-range Cruiser Chaos, or things like Eldar, because its entire role here is to fling out as many of these heavy Nova Cannon shots from a distance as possible, to disable as much of their fleet as possible, to force them to come close to me. If they decide to keep staying at range, then I get to keep bombarding them with Nova Cannons, and they can't even retaliate. So I've got 3 of those. They've got that sort of setup here, where I've got the armor-piercing ammunition, because these guys have shorter range guns. Once I get the enemy to come closer to the things like the Dominators, they have those macro cannons that are just so powerful, and because they're more powerful even than the Retribution's guns, if I can get in close and sort of deal even more brawling damage, then the ship becomes extremely dangerous up close, and they can't stay at distance, so that's that combination there. We're going with the shields again. The Voss pattern Void Shield is a great thing again, although I should have probably gotten the recharge rate first and then gotten the Voss. We're getting extra turrets on these sort of things. One of the sort of weaknesses of the Imperial Navy is their lack of fighter screens, so turrets is actually something that works out pretty okay for them. If you notice, they've got fairly high default turret values, so this doesn't make a huge difference. And on something like the Redeemer of Light over here, or the Redeemer of Illumination, my Retribution battlecruiser, it's got 13 turrets or 18 turrets anyway, so it's got a very high value. Increasing it by 3 only changes it to 21. Now, troop value is influenced by the number of turrets that you have, though, so this means that if someone tries to board me, I've actually got a 78 troop value against boarders. And once I get my crew leveled up with the ratings here, that's going to upgrade even further. So this ship is going to end up extremely resilient against boarding actions because of that, and you can actually get it immune to boarding actions. So that's something you should pay attention to. As you can see, we've sort of got a mix-up of abilities here. All of these have the supercharged void screens because they don't have as much shield value. It's a little bit harder for them to survive if they're getting hit, so they've also got the upgraded shields. They're a little bit fragile, so I like those sort of bonuses and abilities. And Void Shield transfer doesn't matter as much. I've got one Dominator that's set with it, but for the most part, I've got the Taunt for dealing with Eldar, and I've got the Stasis Bomb sort of to... the way the combo works with Stasis Bomb is you get the enemy trapped in the Stasis Bomb, and once they're there, you unload all of your Nova Cannons on anyone stuck in there, and they're probably dead because they can't dodge. So very, very strong thing there. I've got my Dauntlesses here. They've got the upgrade to their speed here. They've got the, whatever it's called, the Mizoa Pattern Drive. I don't actually use these in very many missions anymore, and the Imperials don't need their light cruisers as much as other factions sometimes do. Orks in particular, and Chaos in particular, I think do well with light cruisers, but for the Imperials, they form a weakness in your army, and the enemy can really exploit that. And there's definite times where something like a Dauntless can do good things, but there's less reason to take one of these, because if the enemy picks away all of your Dauntlesses, that's a lot of points that have suddenly gone down the drain, and they're fairly vulnerable, fairly easy to kill. It's not a lot more expensive getting something like a Dominator. If we look at the points value, it's 155 compared to 105, so you're saving 50 points. If you took 3 Dauntlesses, you could take 2 Dominators, and the 2 Dominators are just a lot harder to deal with in a lot of senses. But, you know, there are missions or sort of situations where you would want the Dauntlesses, and that's why I've got them with the Mizoa Pattern Drive. It's to chase down enemy ships, basically. They're pretty functional at that. They also work quite well as support, thanks to Void Shield transfer. I could actually unlock another slot, but again, I don't need them that badly. I haven't upgraded these little escort ships yet, and I probably should. A lot of people have been actually taking the sword frigates with the ignore armor benefit here, which is pretty strong actually, and there's a good strong argument for taking that, but I tend not to take escorts. I just find that escort swarms are kind of vulnerable to a lot of different things, and they're not particularly interesting to play with, so I don't use them. Anyway, let's go ahead and hit search here. So you want your composition to have an answer to pretty much everything, and in this particular case, things like the Retribution, things like the Overlord, are designed to be able to beat up on a good variety of different things, actually. They're good against Eldar, they're good against Chaos, they're good against Orks, they're good against, of course, Imperial Navy. So they're just good all-around ships. So durable that how could they be anything but, you know, decent there. Alright, so we got a Cruiser Clash, which is a 400-point one. I feel kind of... Well, actually, my opponent... we got that bug here again where I don't know what my opponent's faction is, so that'll be fun. We don't really have enough points to take my biggest ship there, that effectively the Retribution, so we're instead just going to take the Overlord. That's perfectly fine. We could take the Mars as well, but it's pretty expensive. Could take some Dauntlesses, but it probably is best for me to take 2 Dauntlesses here. We'll take 2 of the Mark 1s there. He's not going to have anything that, unless he's Eldar, he's not going to have that many things that can instantly burst down one of my Dauntlesses, which is what you worry about. And with 3 Void Shield transfers, I mean, even Eldar can't Alpha Strike one of my Dauntlesses that easily, so I guess we're doing it this way. Alright, so I've got basically one really big, bulky brawler ship, and I've got 2 guys with upgraded speed, so they'll have an okay time chasing down faster elements of this. But, yeah, this is what late game Imperials are kind of like. They're brawlers. They're just really in your face, deal damage, and honestly, they're pretty satisfying to play as. They're not as fun as Orks in a lot of ways, but they've got a lot going for them. So we're going to go ahead and hit our Lightning Strikes and our Void Shield transfers. It looks like we're against Imperials, although that bug has known to show me the wrong faction from time to time, so... Or just crash the game, whatever. No? Okay. No? Okay. Alright, so this Overlord class battlecruiser is going to probably be okay in this fight, just to get up in close and brawl, but I could also try fighting from a distance here. And, you know, I'm not going to, because that kind of gameplay I find is kind of lame, honestly. Although it looks like my opponent has brought just a swarm of frigates. Not only has he brought an entire swarm... No, he's brought 3 Dauntless Mark IIs. Alright, well, let's see if we can get around to the side here at all. One of the interesting things about this game is that one of the better ways to sort of deal with torpedoes is to turn your facing directly towards them, because you've got heavier prow armor, depending on what type of torpedoes they're launching, of course, and also it makes your profile a little bit slimmer, so they're less likely to hit you in the first place. We going to try and get back behind around this bit of terrain here so that their torpedoes are less effective at this range. They're just going to keep flinging them at me. Once we get closer, we'll sort of deal with that. One of the things I want to upgrade on things like my Overlord or whatever are the short burn torpedoes. It's an upgrade that the Imperials get where their torpedoes move faster. It looks like we got around that. Of course, my turrets didn't manage to take out anything, but... Alright, so can we safely fire our torpedoes here, or are we going to hit ourselves? Right, there we go.
Enemy ship sighted.
Alright, so it looks like my opponent is now coming into range here. Let's see if I can minimize the amount of damage I'm going to take from this torpedo wave.
Admiral. Your orders?
Alright, so we've got some micro bombs there that are going to start working on it.
Ship ready.
And we've taken a little bit of hits there. It looks like our prow armor took a majority of that, so we're okay.
Your orders?
And we are just going to want to focus down probably on these sort of ships here first.
Yes, Admiral.
Alright, so our void shield transfer is going through there. We're sort of picking away at these guys with our lovely, lovely shots there. Looks like that torpedo got shot down, so we're fine there.
At your command.
Don't really 100% know what this guy's trying to do here, sideswiping in like that.
Ship ready.
Alright, let's try and do a boarding action on this guy. His anti-boarding capabilities are not going to be brilliant.
Yes, Admiral.
Let's take out this guy here. It's a good idea to take out these lighter ships in a lot of situations, so... There we go. That's one of them down. Let's actually focus this guy. Oh, we need a impact here. Get repair on this Dauntless here.
At your command.
Let's see if I can get in and brawl with our Retribution.
Yes,
Oh, successful boarding for the enemy. I'm gonna get this ship out of here if I can.
Ship ready.
Just barely missed nudging my own ship there, I think. Might actually have even nudged my own ship. Alright.
Awaiting orders. At your command.
Let's try and get this ship around, fire with some torpedoes.
Your orders?
Alright, our shields are back up on this guy, and I don't want to be going into this asteroid field either, so...
Ship ready.
Alright, I want to launch torpedoes, but let's see if I can... Yep, there we go.
Your orders?
I think one of their ships just exploded there. They're down to 2.
Yes, Admiral.
They are indeed down to 2. Let's go ahead and lightning strike this sucker. I don't think I'm going to be worried about running them down necessarily after this. Alright, so we're just going to continue broadsiding. Looks like they're going for the fire-based torpedoes. Now, ramming is another thing that Imperials are good at, but I'm not a particular ramming player. It's not my style. Oh, he is trying to get away. So I guess I will ram. There we go. And there we go with both his ships. And that's sort of the style play of Imperials. It's just you get in there with your big guns, and like I said, those smaller ships just get crushed so easily and do so little damage to those big, heavy Imperial ships. Like, he almost killed one of my Dauntlesses, but my big ship, even though he wasn't really focusing it, obviously, it was just not going to die from that kind of firepower that he had available to him. Like, it just wasn't going to happen. So... At this stage in the game, like, you just save up so that you can get your biggest ship first with whatever upgrade that you happen to want to put on it. In my particular case, I want to put the Retribution on AdMech so that I can get additional shield bonuses and gun bonuses that you normally can't combine together. Because you're limited to 5 at max level. With AdMech, you've got 6 and an additional skill as well. So it gives a lot of utility, and frankly, like, skills are as useful in some respects as those abilities that you get from other favors for other factions. It's just not quite as good in some senses. Like, A plasma bomb is kind of almost as good as a Nova Cannon for the Orks. Like, it kind of is similar. So you can think of them sort of that way, but like these sort of abilities are almost like abilities that you would get from a utility favor. Let's actually go ahead and get this since I can afford to get something from it now.
Mechanicus is ready.
Makes it that lovely red and green color there. So yeah, it gives us an extra skill, it gives us an extra upgrade here. And the upgrade is what I'm going to go for first. We're going to take the extra reload. And you can see how expensive this is. This is why I've been saving up. Like, I still can't even afford the skill that comes with it. We're probably going to go ahead and get something like the micro warp jump, because this is a fairly slow ship here. If we look at its speed here, it's rated at 150, which is pretty bad, but this is really what the Imperials are all about. Big ships, big guns, big damage, and it's pretty satisfying to play that way, because like with the Orks, you have to use all sorts of weird tricks to get the enemy to come close. You have to take a lot of gimmicks, you have to make a lot of sacrifices. With the Imperials, you just have to make your ship selection work for you. Like, if you're up against another brawler faction like the Imperials, then you can take this kind of fleet without worrying too much about taking a bunch of Nova Cannons, and just deal that damage by getting in close and brawling. If you're against Orks, you can do the same, and their tricks are not going to do anything like tractor cannons, who cares? Nova Cannons, well, theirs are going to blow up before yours do. And your shields are so good that those Nova Cannons that the Orks are using, it's going to pick at your health a lot less than yours are going to pick at his. So, and I do actually recommend you take Nova Cannons against Orks, because they might have just spammed the ever-loving hell out of Savage Gunships. If Orks spam Savage Gunships, they can absolutely wreck a Retribution-class battlecruiser if they manage to get within range, but fortunately they're quite slow as well. So, but yeah, that's a look at what makes the Imperials worthwhile playing. They're good, solid choice just all the way throughout. They start off relatively okay with the Dauntlesses. It gets a little bit frustrating once you're in the mid-tier before you've collected up enough Dominators to fight Eldar, but once you've gotten 2 of them, fighting Eldar is a lot more simple, a lot easier, and a lot more pleasant, and once you get to this stage in the game, you've got the tools to deal with pretty much every composition. A lot of your ships are good at dealing with many, many different types of threats. An example is this Retribution. It is good against pretty much every ship in the game. Like, even a Void Stalker can't get away from this that easily unscathed if you have good control over your ships and such. You can definitely take a lot of hits from it, and then it has to back off, and then when it comes around for another pass or whatever, you might be able to taunt it or something like that, and your broadsides are extremely good at dealing damage to something like that. So that's the Imperial Navy, and that's why they're good to play. Anyway, I hope you found this video enjoyable, and of course, as always, I hope to see you all next time.